Of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tristero. Chapter 171. At long last. Shota's point of view. Part 4. Settling back onto the bed to await their items and Toshinori, Shouta felt not quite as apprehensive as before. Knowing his husband, the lovable oaf, had probably been just as self-blaming as he'd been during all of this. Atsuhiro was right. They really were quite the pair of self-sacrificing idiots, weren't they?
Papa, when I gonna meet Usagi-san and Nato-kun? Do you think they'll... I know... It's not wrong for me to just be to be there,
Blinking out of his thoughts, his hands gently running a comb that Melissa had gifted the child through those beautiful waves of starlit hair, the eatery owner looked down at her small, slightly nervous form. God, this kid. Just like his other children, he could see himself loving her forever and a day. Eri-chan, he murmured gently, the soft purr of his voice causing her to release a quiet, relieved little sigh. They're going to adore you. They would have done, even if you'd kept your quirk, he promised, his deft fingers carefully manipulating those soft strands into a pair of glassy pigtails. We're going to be a family, a real one. Do you remember what that means, She began, her tiny toes wriggling near the end of the bed, her tone genuinely thoughtful.
That family isn't just about who you're related to,
she furthered, his hand still dutifully securing her silky locks.
It's about the feelings that you have for people, 'cause talking and being together and caring, no matter what, is something that can, sometimes means more than, icky things like blood, she added, her button nose scrunching up cutely as she chuckled fondly with her words. Yes, that's right. He smiled, her lovely face looking up at him from where she sat in the cradle of his crossed legs. Just like you. Be most of the people I call family, the people who you'll come to know as family, don't have any blood relations to love and be loved by. He offered, his expression softening. Which means that the love we make between ourselves is all the more precious. He told her, the apples of her cheeks pinking. Can you remember why love is the most precious resource in this world, Oh, yes!
She veritably chirped.
It's the only thing that makes more of itself the more you give it away,
she preened.
You said it was the only real magic you can find, and oh, I'm not supposed to say that to Atsuhiro, she said, in case it makes him sad, 'cause he likes other kinds of magic too.
Leaning down to press a kiss against her now horn-free forehead, Shouta chuckled and hugged the kid close. How could anyone not love such a wonderful young person? Inelegantly shouldering his way back into the guest suite with a duffel bag and a child's rucksack, David smiled at the scene before him. That's exactly right, Eri-chan.
I remembered it right, really? How did you get to be so smart, Papa?
A scene that reminded him of the precious times he'd spent with Melissa at that tender age. Damn, wherever did the time go? Well, if he remembered correctly, as much as he adored his precious sunflower child, must have been some pretty dark days for him, hadn't they? His arranged marriage with the girl's mother had dissolved. His friendship with Toshinori had been rocky at best, but he'd hoped at the time that since he'd had a child and they were both free, he could have maybe tried again, only the superpower blonde who'd snagged his heart and opened his worldview out beyond what he'd learned as a genius in the United States wanted nothing more than friendship from anyone. And then 2 years later, when Melissa was 6 and his business was booming, it had blown the name Aizawa Shouta to disquiet his peace and make a mockery of the heroic celibacy the number one had imposed upon himself. That name, that person, had appeared seemingly out of nowhere to ruin the chance he believed he'd had to reassemble what they'd had together, to recreate and build back the relationship he'd had to destroy, the relationship he'd been too much of a coward to fight for, because S.H.I.E.L.D. men were men, because S.H.I.E.L.D. men had a moral, ethical, and economic duty to bring other S.H.I.E.L.D.s into the world, to continue to build the technological empire started by his great-grandfather at the dawn of quirks spreading throughout the globe. He'd not been able to imagine then, when he'd taken his daughter to the Noronoko Cafe for the first time to break his heart anew, that a greater happiness was only a few years away, and now here he was, happy, loved, fulfilled in a way he'd never believed possible. His beautiful quirkless daughter was vibrant, thriving, and adored by genuine friends. His research was flourishing. A friendship between himself and the eccentric Garaki Kyudai had led him to make, develop, and discover things that the rest of the scientific community had deemed impossible. And as he approached the pair on the bed now, as he double-checked that his bendy fingers weren't damaging the white black paw prints scattered in box containing some delicious cookies he'd been told to have a few of, it was sometimes hard to imagine, even now, that the life he loved so much was all thanks to Shouta. Shouta, who he'd initially disliked intensely. Shouta, who'd calmly and rationally handled the fractious situation as though he'd been born to it. Shouta, who'd helped to coach Melissa through learning Japanese, who'd given her every opportunity to be involved in the lives of those wonderful children he'd helped their parents to raise, to give her friends, real ones, not ones who snooped around her due to her name, her money, who joked and sneered about her being quirkless when they thought she was out of earshot. No, those teenagers are so different, all from different backgrounds with incredibly different family situations. They'd embraced Melissa for who she was even before she could talk to them properly. The look on her face when she'd greeted them and walked them into the manor house she called home just now had made him feel 20 years younger and several pounds lighter. To think that the man who had made all of this possible had been tormented so cruelly turned his stomach in knots, but... "Hi, you two. Who ordered pulpit cookies, huh?" Now wasn't the time to dwell on such things, was it? No, because later on, when everyone was settled, he'd venture down to Garaki-sensei's lab to ensure that those Yakuza bastards were having the kind of welcome they deserved.
"Oh, Papa, you teach them to make these, really? They're so yummy!"
That's right, sweetheart, and I'll teach you to make them too, if you like. Watching as Annie, those cherry eyes glistening, nodded at him enthusiastically, Shouta couldn't stop the fond, endearing laugh that left him, his eyes sharing an indulgent look with David before he sneaked a glance at his mostly bare arms once more. He knew that the scars were gone, that overhaul had done its job, that he and the child he hoped to adopt were now completely devoid of any kinds of marks or blemishes, but you realize that he wouldn't have given a damn about such things, don't you? Blinking back to the scientist up next to him, the other's fancy phone in plain sight between them, ready to flash up with a security message reporting that the Kurogiri Daiichi had returned to the manor house, Shouta offered a sheepish grin. "I know," he replied, his left hand rubbing self-consciously over the crook of his right elbow, the cookie he'd been eating forgotten. "And it's not... I mean, I don't care about such things either," he said, their eyes locking. "I just don't want him and the others to worry about me any more than what they have been doing, you know." He sighed. This will have been really hard on them," he reminded, his shoulders rolling in a tired sigh. "But those kids, they're so damn perceptive," he mused, a grin trying to spark across his eyes and lips. "Back when Yuta-san was all for one and I took part in the battle against him, there's all the bruises I got," he added, his tone purposefully low, so not to upset Eri. "They're not little kids anymore, my friend. David breathed gently. And you've been preparing them for UA, right? That's the whole reason you became a pro in the first place, isn't it? The older man grinned. You spend so much time thinking about others, so. He smiled, his brows furrowing in concern. When will you realize that we want to take care of you for a change, Chuckling properly this time, the martial arts expert bowed his head a little. I guess I'm in for a whole lot of coddling, huh? Jumping when the scientist's hand capped his shoulder affectionately, that cobalt gaze playful, the level 7 childminder, husband, cat dad, father, pro, and mentor besides, Lamb snorted a touch. I think that's the biggest understatement this side of the current century, don't you? He grinned, his expression softening somewhat. And you need to let them. Let us. You understand? He urged gently. I'm not quite sure what it is about you, Show, but you need to let go of your need to be the protector exclusively. We love you for you, not for what you do for us. And what you do for us is a lot. Maybe too much in some ways. He said, his words shocking him slightly. You must never think, even for 1 second, that any of us... None of us would leave you or stop loving you, even if you did something crazy, like closing down the cafe and riding off into the sunset. He snickered, a wave of relief crashing over him. He thought that David had meant... He thought that the scientist had been implying that he'd harmed his community by being too involved. Aye, the older stated, those fingers squeezing his shoulders. My point is that it's okay for you not to be in control of the situation all the time. It's okay to let your family be there for you, for them to be strong while you have a much-needed break. He set his head cocking to the side. We want to do for you what you have always done for us. We want to show you the same kind of love, warmth, and appreciation that you dish out at the same astonishing rate you whip up those amazing bentos and cakes. He smiled. Please, Shouta, let us take the metaphorical wheel for you, he asked, his eyes tearing a touch. Let us fawn, fuss, and coddle you, even if it's only for a while you're all here in New Eden. Okay? When the scientist's phone flashed up, he and Eri had waved him off before he offered the rest of the box to the child, who gushed at the gesture. Not spoiling a rotten was going to be incredibly difficult, wasn't it?
Papa, how come there were different colors of, this stuff?
Grinning, the girl snuggling into his side, Shouta appraised the last few cookies with a chuckle. That stuff is called icing sugar, or frosting, he explained diligently. The different colors show the different flavors. He furthered, his fingers gesturing to the two she'd held up for him to see. This red one is pomegranate, and the yellow one is yuzu. He told her, those enchanted irises allowing your pupils to widen in wonder.
I know. Just how many fruits are there?
She asked, her genuine curiosity making his heart melt and his anger against Jizaki burn. I know!
Would I be able to try them all, do you think?
Yes, you will. He promised, the deft fingers of his right hand fondly cupping her cheek as she smiled. Any time. I hope to introduce you to all kinds of delicious things and other things besides, he furthered. Do you remember the promise I made to you a few days ago?
Oh, she hummed before she brightened. Oh, you promised that I, would have a edumacation that'd give me everything I'd, ever need to grow up and decide who I want to be and what I want to do when I'm big and strong like you, she chirped. And that means, that I don't have to be good at everything, but that I'll have lots of chances to see what I'm good at. And that my brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles and grandparents will be right there with me, with you and Toshido-san, she added happily. That's a real big promise to make, though, Papa, she admitted, her cheeks pinking a touch. Are you sure that they, I know What am I doing all of that? She asked shyly, her tone a little unsure. They don't even know me yet.
But they will, he gently interrupted. And they're going to adore you. Wasn't that another promise I made to you,
Nodding, her eyes sparkling with wonder once more. She then proceeded to take a bite of each cookie with delighted abandon. These are better than apples!
Snickering, his senses too focused on the child to realize that the door at the other end of the expansive chamber had opened, Shouta watched her cheeks chipmunk so with pleasure. Katsuki and Rikito are going to run me out of the cafe business if they keep baking like this,
And almost completely missed the arrival of the man he'd been longing to see for weeks. The man he'd longed to be held by from the second he'd waved him off at the airport on his final voyage to Australia.
Cho?
Snapping his head to the doorway, his eyes widening, is a strange mixture of disbelief, hope, and shock. He felt Eri shift on the bed beside him, her crumb-peppered hands pointing at the bronzed brow and tugging at the short sleeve of his hospital pajama top. Papa, is that...
Toshi.
And everything happened so fast. He couldn't believe that his husband was here. Those beautiful eyes staring at...
I'm sorry.
Having moved towards his partner, the other a blur of blue, red, and gold, Shouta didn't get any further than the end of the massive, overly plump bed. Shh. He soothed, his arms opening to wrap around broad, trembling shoulders, the other slotting between his parted legs whilst he sat on the bed, and the number one knelt his tear-streaked face pressed into the soft top he wore whilst he shook. God.
I love you. I love you so much. Can you ever forgive me?
Steeling himself, his lashes laced with tears, he blinked towards Eri before turning his attention back to the man he'd married. The man he'd sworn to love forever, the man he couldn't imagine not loving ever.
There's nothing to forgive,
he murmured, his own breath hitching.
I love you too.
Knowing that there'd be a riot if they squirreled themselves away for too long, Shouta invited his precious person onto the bed, a dreamy sigh escaping him as impossibly strong arms cocooned around him, holding him close, wrapping him up as though he was the most important thing in the world.
Have you been eating properly? Sure, really? Yes, really.
He juggled, his face pillowed against the other's expansive chest, the scent of ash, dust, and rubble, something he'd grown used to over time.
A little birdie or two let slip that you've been running around, potentially ready to tear up the whole of Musutafu looking for me, and that you weren't doing much else.
He mock-chided.
How I'm going to stop our kids from piling on you for neglecting yourself is beyond me, but I think I can make things a little easier on you if you promise to have this, mini break come almost honeymoon with me.
He murmured, a yawn rippling through him whilst he focused on the feeling of strong, warm fingers strumming his back like a harp. God, he'd missed this closeness. Hell, he'd not realized how ridiculously touch-starved he'd been until Toshinori had started courting him all those years ago.
You have my word, kitten,
the other offered after a thick, difficult swallow. His beautiful neon blue eyes were still red, but Shouta could do little about that now. No, all he could do, all he wanted to do, was lie there and listen to the other's heart's steady thrum, lulling him further into a sense of peace he'd not known for the past week. A week that felt like a lifetime.
I'm also going to retire.
Blinking, his form sitting up despite himself, the eatery owner couldn't stop his bulk, whilst looking down the number one, as though he'd grown another head.
Toshi, he breathed, his head shaking. You can't do that. Especially just for Kitten.
He cut in gently, those powerful hands reaching up to cup his face in wonder, his eyes staring anew.
For you, I'd give up everything, but it's not just for you that I'm doing this,
he murmured.
It's for us,
he stated, their eyes locking.
It's for NATO, those other wonderful children of ours, and for that darling little girl you've saved,
he said.
I've been so stupid, neglectful. No, that's Shouta!
He all but cried, his tone distressed.
I've been running around the globe like a man possessed, future-proofing for the terrible calamity that has yet to happen. That might not ever happen because I'm a paranoid fool who took you and our family for granted.
He gushed his own body, sitting up to curl protectively around him once more.
I put our honeymoon to Paris on hold. I kept making excuses because I knew I could get the World Pro Initiative off the ground. Because no one else could. Because it was my duty, my ridiculous legacy.
The other continued as he listened. As he let the other vent everything he needed to say, just between the two of them for now.
As the symbol of peace, I was ready to fight Shigaraki all over again. I was ready to die, if it meant leaving you and the others in a world free of such evil, but kitten,
he wept.
I'd never thought, not even for a second, about what that'd truly mean.
He rasped.
Because I can't. I cannot imagine a world without you in it. I'm not strong enough. I couldn't bear it.
He closed his sob.
I have been so stupid. I was running with blinkers on and taking for granted what was right in front of me.
He sniffled.
How could I devalue you, our family, like that? Toshi, you didn't.
He tried his own heartbreaking.
No, Sho, I did. That's exactly what I did, and I swear to you, no matter how long it takes, I will make this up to you, to our son, and everyone else that my fucking arrogance has helped. Okay?
Letting out a breathy sigh, Shouta leaned into the other's warmth and hummed the tune he'd used to lull the kids when they were younger and upset into feeling better, his eyes closing as he simply breathed his partner in and basked in the feeling of the love they created together.
You and that big old heart of yours.
He chuckled, his voice a little strained even to his own ears.
Whatever am I going to do with you?